Adrift in silence. 13 days felt like eternity when counting them alone. Nyx traced another mark into the metal panel with a broken shard of her ship's console. 13 lines, 13 sunrises over this nameless moon's horizon. 13 days since her people had branded her traitor and left her to die. The distress beacon flickered weakly beside her, its power cells draining faster than she'd calculated. Like her, it was failing gradually, stubbornly into the void. The soft, rhythmic pulse mimicked a heartbeat, perhaps the only one for light years in any direction. Nyx pressed her forehead against the cold viewport glass. Her violet skin looked ashen even in the ambient light of the gas giant that dominated the sky. Once, that color had marked her as elite among her kind, the Savatrians. Now it was just another reminder of what she'd lost. Her fingers instinctively sought the crystal pendant hidden beneath her damaged armor. They hadn't taken that, at least. Small mercies in an unmerciful universe. "Just give up," she whispered to the beacon. "No one's coming." The device blinked on, defiant against logic and probability. Nyx almost smiled at its persistence. Almost. She hadn't spoken her name aloud since the crash. Speaking it felt dangerous, as if the syllables might somehow travel across the vacuum to her pursuers. Commander Vierx had made it clear. Her identity was forfeit, her existence erased from Savatrian records. No one would search for someone who officially no longer existed. Pain shot through her side where shrapnel had pierced her during the landing. Not landing, crash. She needed to be honest with herself even now, especially now. The wound was healing poorly, infection creeping in despite the nanogel she'd applied. Without medical attention, she had perhaps another week before sepsis set in. The beacon would outlast her, blinking plaintively over her corpse. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. 13 days of silence, and now she couldn't stop talking to herself. Madness came before death, apparently. Nyx dragged herself to the emergency kit, searching for anything useful she might have overlooked. The rations were gone, medical supplies nearly depleted, oxygen recyclers functioning at minimal capacity. The ship's engines had been deliberately disabled during her exile. They'd wanted her alive enough to suffer, to contemplate her betrayal before the end. Her crime, disobeying a direct order to bomb a settlement of peaceful scholars who discovered uncomfortable truths about Savatrian history. Their real sin had been knowledge, not rebellion. She'd been named traitor for refusing to become a murderer. Static crackled through the ship's damaged communications array. Nyx froze. For 13 days, there had been nothing but emptiness on all frequencies. She'd kept it on out of desperation, not hope. She lunged for the console, ignoring the protest from her injured side. Adjusting dials with trembling fingers, she tried to isolate the signal. It wasn't Savatrian. Their transmissions carried a distinctive modulation she'd recognize instantly. This was something else, something foreign. Reading anomalous energy signature. Repeat freighter horizon approaching. Anyone receiving. A human voice, unmistakable. Nyx had studied their languages during her tactical training. Humans were considered primitive by Savatrian standards, emotional, unpredictable, but remarkably adaptive. They were classified as potential threats, but too scattered among their colonies to warrant immediate concern. Her finger hovered over the transmit button. Responding meant risk. Humans feared what they didn't understand, and she was definitively not human, but silence meant certain death. "This is," she hesitated, her true name catching in her throat. "This is Survivor Nyx. One life sign, critical condition. Please respond." Static answered her. She repeated the message, desperation bleeding into her voice. Had she imagined the transmission? Was this what dying felt like? Hallucinations of rescue, of hope. Then, Survivor Nyx, this is Dominic Reeves, pilot of Independent Freighter Horizon. Reading your signal now. Stand by for approach. Nyx collapsed against the console, emotion overwhelming her for the first time since her exile began. Not relief, she wasn't naive enough for that, but something equally dangerous, possibility. Above the moon's bleak horizon, a light appeared that wasn't stellar. It moved with purpose, growing brighter. A ship, small by Savatrian standards, but intact, functional. Her ticket off this rock if she could convince its pilot to help her. She checked her reflection in a broken panel. Her skin's natural luminescence had dulled with malnutrition. The markings along her temples, once a source of pride indicating her scientific rank, were obscured by dried blood and grime. The human would see a monster, an alien creature from nightmare. Dominic Reeves wasn't supposed to be in this sector. His navigation charts had specifically labeled it a gravitational anomaly zone, corporate speak for dangerous and unprofitable. But the solar flare had fried his primary navigation systems, and the backup had recalibrated their course through this shortcut rather than around it. When the strange energy signature appeared on his scanner, protocol dictated he log it and continue. Anomalies were common in space, usually natural phenomena, occasionally remnants of ancient technology, rarely worth the fuel to investigate. But something about this signal nagged at him. It pulsed with too much regularity to be natural, and buried within it so faint he almost missed it was a pattern, not random, deliberate. Horizon, this is Central. You're off designated route. Report status. Dominic sighed. Corporate breath down his neck even out here in the void. Central, this is Horizon. Minor nav system recalibration after solar activity. All systems nominal. Investigating potential distress signal. Negative Horizon. No registered vessels in that sector. Return to designated route. Dominic glanced at the signal again. Someone was out there, someone alive. Maybe the last soul they'd ever be. Sorry, Central, you're breaking up. He disabled the comm unit. They'd reprimand him later, dock his pay probably, add it to his growing list of infractions. The moon came into view, a barren, cratered rock orbiting a swollen gas giant. Nothing special, except for the faint energy signature emanating from its surface. Dominic engaged the landing thrusters, bringing the horizon down about half a kilometer from the signal's origin. No sense landing right on top of an unknown situation. He suited up methodically. Environment suit, oxygen reserves, emergency medical kit, sidearm. Standard procedure for uncharted worlds. The ship's sensors indicated breathable but thin atmosphere, frigid temperatures, minimal radiation. Survivable but not comfortable. As the airlock cycled and the ramp extended, Dominic's boots met the moon's surface with a soft crunch of frost-covered stone. The landscape stretched before him, desolate and beautiful in its starkness. The massive gas giant dominated the sky, casting everything in an eerie blue-green glow. He checked his handheld tracker. The signal was stronger now, emanating from beyond a ridge of jagged rock formations. Something glinted there, something not natural to this environment. Dominic approached cautiously, one hand near his sidearm. Years of solo freight runs had taught him that space was mostly empty, but the parts that weren't could be unpredictable. The wreckage came into view as he crested the ridge. It wasn't like any vessel he recognized, sleek, organic lines, hull material that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Alien technology, definitely. The ship was half buried in a shallow canyon, torn open like a wound. Movement caught his eye, someone watching from the shadows of the damaged craft, someone waiting. "Hello," he called, keeping his distance. "I received your distress call. I'm Dominic Reeves." A figure emerged slowly from the wreckage. Dominic's breath caught in his throat. She, and it was clearly female in form, was unlike any being he'd encountered. Tall and slender, with violet skin that seemed to emit a faint luminescence. Intricate markings traced patterns along her temples and neck. Her eyes were large, entirely black except for pinpoints of silver that reflected the starlight. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "You came," she said, her voice surprisingly melodic, accent strange, but words clear. "I didn't think anyone would." Dominic noticed how she braced herself against the ship's hull, the awkward angle of her posture indicating injury. Dark fluid, blood, had dried along her side where her armor was cracked. "You're hurt," he said, stepping closer but stopping when she tensed. "I have medical supplies." "Why did you come?" she asked, ignoring his offer. "What do you want?" The direct question caught him off guard. "I heard your distress call. That's generally why people send them, isn't it? To be rescued." For a moment she just stared at him as if the concept was foreign. Finally, she nodded once. "I am Nix, former science officer of the Civatrian Exploration Fleet." A pause. "Currently no one." "Well, Nix," Dominic said, carefully removing his medical kit from his pack. "Currently I'm a freight pilot who's very far off course. My ship is about half a click that way. Can you walk?" She straightened, pride visibly overriding pain. "I've survived 13 days here. I can walk." But as she took her first step away from the hull's support, her knees buckled. Dominic lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She was surprisingly light in his arms and burning with fever. "Don't," she began, trying to push him away. "Not leaving you here," Dominic said firmly. "We can discuss terms once you're not dying." Their eyes met, human determination against alien pride. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then Nyx nodded, a gesture so human it startled him. "Terms," she echoed. "Yes, I accept your assistance, for now." As Dominic helped her across the barren landscape toward his ship, neither spoke. But the silence between them had changed, no longer empty, but filled with unasked questions and uncertain futures. Above them, the stars watched impassively as two beings from distant worlds began a journey neither had anticipated. Behind them, the wrecked ship's beacon finally flickered and died, its purpose fulfilled after 13 days of crying into the void. The journey back to the horizon stretched longer with each step. Dominic supported Nyx's weight as they navigated the treacherous terrain, her arm draped reluctantly across his shoulders. Though she tried to mask it, each labored breath revealed the severity of her condition. "We should rest," Dominic suggested as they reached a flat outcropping of rock. "No," Nyx insisted, her voice strained but resolute. "Your ship, we continue." Dominic frowned, nodding the deepening blue tint around her wound, infection spreading visibly beneath her translucent skin. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "Necessity," she replied simply, scanning the horizon with those unsettling silver-flecked eyes. "This moon, not safe after dark." As if confirming her warning, a distant howl echoed across the barren landscape, a sound that raised the hair on Dominic's neck. Not wind, something alive, something hunting. "What was that?" he asked, hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. "Reason to hurry," Nyx said, forcing herself upright. They pressed on, the gas giant's massive presence dominating the sky as it began its slow descent toward the horizon. Temperatures dropped rapidly, crystallizing their breath in the thinning air. The terrain grew increasingly unstable, frost-fractured stones shifting treacherously beneath their feet. When the horizon finally came into view, its weathered hull gleaming in the dying light, Dominic felt Nyx tense beside him. "Your vessel is primitive," she observed, studying its utilitarian design. Dominic chuckled despite their situation. "She's not pretty, but she's reliable, unlike some fancier ships that apparently crash on desolate moons." For a moment he thought he'd offended her. Then, incredibly, a sound escaped her, something between a cough and a laugh, rusty from disuse. "A valid observation," she conceded. The ship's access ramp descended at Dominic's remote command. Warm air rushed out to meet them, carrying the familiar sense of engine oil, recycled oxygen, and the faint mustiness inherent to all spacecraft. To Dominic, it smelled like home. To Nyx, it was altogether alien. She hesitated at the threshold, her gaze sweeping the interior with military precision. "It's safe," Dominic assured her. "Just me and some cargo bound for the Epsilon colonies." "You travel alone?" she asked, clearly finding the concept strange. "Independent contractor," he explained, helping her aboard. "Corporations don't waste personnel on low-priority routes." The ramp sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss, locking out the hostile environment. Dominic guided Nyx to the ship's small medical bay, little more than an alcove off the main cabin with basic equipment. "Sit," he instructed, gesturing to the examination table. When she complied, he began gathering supplies from storage compartments. "I need to see that wound properly." Nyx's fingers moved to the damaged sections of her armor, unfastening complex latches with practiced efficiency. The material, unlike any Dominic had encountered, seemed almost alive, sections retracting and expanding as she manipulated hidden mechanisms. She winced as the chest plate finally released, revealing the full extent of her injury. A jagged gash ran along her side, its edges unnaturally dark against her violet skin. The wound pulsed faintly with the same luminescence as her skin, but dimmer, sickly. "Infection has progressed," she stated clinically, as if discussing someone else's body. "Cevatrian physiology differs from human. Your antibiotics will be ineffective." Dominic paused, medical scanner in hand. "Then what do you suggest?" Nyx reached into a concealed compartment in her armor and extracted a small vial containing iridescent blue liquid. "Nanomed serum, last dose, will stabilize me temporarily." She administered it herself, pressing the vial against her neck where her markings converged. The effect was immediate, her breathing eased slightly, the wound's angry glow diminishing. "That buys us time," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "Not a cure." Dominic nodded, continuing to clean and dress the wound with careful movements. Neither spoke as he worked, the silence broken only by the ship's ambient hum and occasional beeps from the medical scanner. "Why did you respond to my signal?" Nix finally asked, her voice quieter now. "Your authorities ordered you to ignore it." Dominic's hands stilled momentarily. "You heard that transmission." "My ship's communication systems remained partially functional. I monitored all frequencies." He considered her question, resuming his work. "Let's just say I've been on the other side of an unanswered distress call." "You disobeyed," she observed, studying him with newfound interest. "As did I." The parallel wasn't lost on Dominic. He secured the final bandage before stepping back to assess his work. "Rest. I'll prepare something for you to eat, assuming your species does that." "We do," she confirmed, a ghost of amusement in her voice. "Though I suspect our preferences differ significantly." Dominic moved to the galley, keenly aware of Nix's eyes following his every movement. While the food synthesizer processed a protein-rich broth, the safest option for an unknown metabolism, he opened the ship's computer terminal. "Horizon, initiate discrete biological analysis. Subject, non-human medical bay, basic physiological parameters only," he instructed quietly. "Analysis initiated," the ship's AI responded. "Warning, unknown biological signature detected, quarantine protocols recommended." "Override, authorization Reeves Delta 7. "Override accepted, preliminary results available in 20 minutes. When Dominic returned with the steaming broth, he found Nix examining the medical bay's equipment with evident curiosity. "Your technology is resourceful," she said, accepting the bowl cautiously. "Ingenious adaptations despite material limitations." "Was that almost a compliment?" Dominic asked, leaning against the doorframe. She sampled the broth tentatively. "An observation. My people believe humans are primitive, inefficient, yet you survive, even thrive with less advanced technology." "Sometimes limitations breed innovation," Dominic replied. "When you can't just throw power or resources at a problem, you find creative solutions." Nix considered this as she continued eating. Dominic noticed how deliberately she moved, each action precise and measured, military training evident in her bearing despite her weakened state. "Your ship," she said after finishing the broth, "can it outrun Savatrian vessels?" The question caught Dominic off guard. "I thought you were exiled, abandoned." "I was," her expression darkened. "But exile is meant to end in death if I survive." "They'll come looking," Dominic finished, understanding dawning. "How much time do we have?" "Unknown. My beacon was weak, specific to my vessel's frequency. But if patrol units detected your landing." The implications hung heavy between them. Dominic moved to the cockpit, initiating the pre-launch sequence. "We need to move, now." Dominic enhanced the scanner output. At first, nothing. Then a faint anomaly appeared at the edge of detection range. A distortion in the atmosphere, moving with deliberate precision toward the crash site. "Scout drone," Nix confirmed, her voice tightly controlled. "Preliminary reconnaissance before retrieval team arrives." "Will it detect us?" "Eventually." She turned to him, urgency breaking through her composed facade. "You should leave me, return to your route. They have no quarrel with humans." Dominic snorted. "Right, abandon you after all this trouble, not happening." "This is not your fight," she insisted. "The Savatrian Enforcement Division does not practice mercy. They will eliminate you as an accomplice." Nix followed him despite her condition, studying the control panel with analytical interest. "Your ship's energy signature is distinctive. They will track it." "Not if I can help it," Dominic muttered, hands flying across the controls. "Horizon mask engine emissions run silent protocol." "Silent protocol engaged. Warning, reduced power availability. Emergency systems only." As the engines hummed to life, Dominic felt rather than saw Nix tense beside him. Her gaze had fixed on the external monitors, tracking something beyond the ship's limited visual range. "We are not alone," she whispered. Dominic enhanced the scanner output. At first, nothing. Then a faint anomaly appeared at the edge of detection range. a distortion in the atmosphere moving with deliberate precision toward the crash site. Scout drone, Nix confirmed, her voice tightly controlled. Preliminary reconnaissance before retrieval team arrives. Will it detect us? Eventually, she turned to him, urgency breaking through her composed facade. You should leave me, return to your route. They have no quarrel with humans. Dominic snorted. Right, abandon you after all this trouble, not happening. This is not your fight, she insisted. The Savatrian Enforcement Division does not practice mercy. They will eliminate you as an accomplice. Wouldn't be the first time someone's tried to eliminate me, Dominic replied, finalizing the launch calculations. Secure yourself. This takeoff won't be gentle. Nix hesitated, clearly unused to being contradicted. For a moment, Dominic thought she might argue further. Instead, she lowered herself into the co-pilot's seat, fastening the restraints with military precision. Your decision is illogical, she said finally. Been called worse. Dominic engaged the thrusters, pushing the horizon into a steep ascent trajectory. Besides, I'm curious about what makes an elite Savatrian officer turn against her own people. The ship shuddered as it broke atmosphere, acceleration pressing them into their seats. Dominic piloted manually, avoiding standard ascent patterns that might be easily tracked. Once they cleared the moon's gravity well, he plotted an erratic course through the surrounding asteroid field, a natural shield against both visual and sensor detection. We'll hide here temporarily, he explained, powering down non-essential systems. Let your friends search the surface while we plan our next move. Nix's expression remained unreadable, but something in her posture had changed. A subtle relaxation, perhaps the first hint of trust. They are not my friends, she said quietly. Not anymore. Dominic nodded, understanding more than she realized. Yeah, well, neither are mine. Corporate will have a bounty on this ship the moment they realize I've gone completely off-grid. Then we are both fugitives, Nix observed, her silver-flecked eyes reflecting the asteroid field visible through the viewport. You have jeopardized your future by assisting me. Dominic shrugged. My future wasn't looking particularly promising anyway. Shipping Corporation doesn't exactly value aging pilots with disciplinary records. A comfortable silence settled between them as the horizon drifted among the asteroids, its systems in low-power mode to minimize detection. Through the viewport, the gas giant loomed massive and indifferent, its swirling storms a reminder of forces beyond their control. Why did you do it? Dominic asked finally. Whatever got you exiled, what made it worth this? Nix's gaze remained fixed on the stars, her expression momentarily distant. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight Dominic hadn't heard before. I was ordered to eliminate a settlement. Scientists, researchers studying ancient archives our leadership had declared forbidden. They discovered historical records contradicting our official doctrine. She paused, tracing one of the markings on her arm absently. I was to make it appear as an accident, reactor malfunction, simple, efficient. But you couldn't go through with it, Dominic guessed. I did worse, Nix replied, meeting his eyes directly now. I warned them, helped them escape, then sabotaged my own mission completely. The admission hung in the air between them, a confession that had cost her everything. Truth over loyalty, Dominic said quietly. Tough choice. There was no choice, she responded, conviction momentarily breaking through her controlled demeanor. Only necessity. Before Dominic could respond, the ship's proximity alert chimed softly. On the scanner, a larger signature had appeared near the moon's surface, a vessel emerging from hyperspace. Enforcement cruiser, Nix confirmed, tension returning to her frame. They will detect us eventually. Dominic's mind raced through options, each less appealing than the last. Standard evasion tactics wouldn't work against technology as advanced as hers had described. I need to know everything about their tracking capabilities, he said, turning to her, and I need to know now. For a heartbeat, Nix hesitated, the final threshold between her past and whatever future lay ahead. Then, making her decision, she leaned forward. Their primary detection system utilizes quantum resonance imaging. It can identify specific molecular patterns across vast distances. My armor, she gestured to the damaged suit she still wore, contains trace elements they can track. Then we need to get rid of it, Dominic said decisively. Nix's expression shifted subtly, the first genuine surprise he'd seen from her. The armor is bonded to my neural pathways. It contains everything, my identity, my history. Dominic understood immediately. She wasn't just talking about equipment. This was her last connection to her former life, her people, her identity. I can't tell you what to do, he said quietly. But right now, that armor is a beacon leading them straight to us. Their eyes met across the cockpit, understanding passing between them. Survival required sacrifice, something they both understood all too well. Nix nodded once, decision made. Prepare your ship for immediate departure. I will do what must be done. As she rose unsteadily to her feet, Dominic caught her arm gently. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Back then, I mean. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, the first he'd seen. We shall see if you still believe that when this is finished.